In the corner of Pentagon Briefing Room 3A sat the quiet translator, ignored by the generals discussing classified operations in 3 languages she understood better than they did. They handed her documents to translate like she was a machine, never noticing how her fingers paused on certain code sequences, how her eyes tracked patterns they couldn't see, until the day she realized the routine diplomatic correspondence she was translating contained activation codes for sleeper cells across Europe. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden expertise and dangerous discoveries, tell me in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who serve in ways we never see. The morning briefing in Pentagon Room 3A began at precisely 800 hours, as it had every Tuesday for the past 18 months. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived 15 minutes early, as she always did, arranging her translation materials on the small desk positioned strategically in the corner where she could observe but not interfere with the flow of high-level military discussions. At 35, Elena possessed the kind of unassuming presence that made her functionally invisible in rooms filled with decorated officers and senior intelligence officials. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Her clothes were professional but unremarkable, and her manner was so quietly competent that most people forgot she was there within minutes of her arrival. General Marcus Thornton, a man whose chest bore enough ribbons to chronicle 2 decades of classified operations, took his position at the head of the conference table without acknowledging Elena's presence. To him, she was simply part of the room's equipment, useful when needed, ignored otherwise. "Good morning, gentlemen," Thornton began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. "We have several time-sensitive matters to address before the Secretary's briefing at 1000 hours. Elena opened her laptop and prepared to take notes, her trained ear automatically sorting through the various conversations that filled the room as officers settled into their seats. She heard fragments in English, Spanish, and German, languages that would require her services as the morning progressed. Colonel James Morrison, the Deputy Director of European Operations, spread several documents across the table. "Sir, we've received diplomatic correspondence from our NATO allies regarding joint training exercises in the Baltic region. Some of the communications are in German and Spanish, requiring translation before we can proceed with operational planning." General Thornton nodded toward Elena without looking at her. "Doctor, we'll need those documents processed immediately. Standard diplomatic translation protocols." "Yes, sir," Elena replied quietly, accepting the folder Morrison handed her. To the assembled officers, she was Dr. Elena Vasquez, senior translator for the Department of Defense, holder of advanced degrees in linguistics from Georgetown University, and one of the Pentagon's most reliable language specialists. What none of them knew was that before becoming Dr. Vasquez, she had been someone else entirely. Elena began reviewing the first document, a formal communication from the German Ministry of Defense regarding proposed NATO exercises near the Russian border. Her trained eyes moved quickly through the text, identifying key phrases and technical terminology that would require careful translation to preserve both meaning and nuance. But as she worked, something caught her attention, a pattern in the document structure that had nothing to do with diplomatic language and everything to do with tradecraft she hadn't used in over 3 years. Embedded within the formal German text were subtle irregularities, words that seemed slightly out of place, numerical sequences that appeared to be reference numbers but followed no standard diplomatic format, and spacing inconsistencies that created a secondary pattern when viewed through the right analytical framework. Elena's fingers paused on her keyboard as recognition dawned. These weren't translation errors or bureaucratic inefficiencies. They were encoding techniques, sophisticated methods of hiding information within seemingly innocent text that she had learned during 8 years with the CIA's cryptanalysis division. "Doctor," General Thornton's voice cut through her thoughts. "How long for the German document?" Elena looked up, maintaining her composed expression despite the implications of what she was seeing. "Approximately 15 minutes, sir. The text contains some technical military terminology that requires careful attention to ensure accuracy." "Proceed," Thornton replied, already turning his attention to other matters. Elena returned to the document, but now she was reading it on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it was a routine communication about military exercises. Beneath that, hidden in plain sight, was something far more dangerous. Using analytical techniques she had mastered during her CIA years, Elena began extracting the hidden message. The process was painstaking, identifying the encoding pattern, mapping the numerical sequences, and decrypting the embedded text without appearing to do anything beyond standard translation work. What emerged made her blood run cold. The hidden message wasn't from the German Ministry of Defense at all. It was a set of activation instructions, coordinates, and timing sequences for what appeared to be sleeper cell operations across multiple European cities. The language was clinical, professional, and terrifyingly specific. Elena forced herself to continue working at a normal pace, completing the surface translation while mentally cataloging every detail of the hidden message. Her training had taught her to compartmentalize information, to function normally even when processing intelligence that could reshape global security calculations. Doctor, Colonel Morrison's voice interrupted her concentration. Progress on the German document? Nearly complete, sir, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. I'm just verifying some technical terminology to ensure precision. She finished the surface translation and submitted it to the waiting officers, but kept the encrypted version of the document open on her secure partition, a capability her current position shouldn't have included, but which she had quietly installed using access codes that officially no longer existed. As the meeting progressed, Elena received 2 more documents for translation, one in Spanish from the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs and another in German from the Austrian Defense Ministry. Both appeared to be routine diplomatic correspondence. Both contained the same type of hidden encoding. The Spanish document concealed activation codes for operations in Central America. The Austrian document contained detailed instructions for coordinating with assets across Eastern Europe. Together, the 3 documents painted a picture of a coordinated operation spanning multiple continents and involving dozens of embedded assets. Elena translated the surface content of each document while simultaneously decrypting the hidden messages, her mind working on multiple levels as she processed information that could prevent or precipitate an international crisis. General Thornton reviewed her translations with the distracted efficiency of someone who trusted her competence completely. Excellent work, Doctor. Standard diplomatic boilerplate, nothing requiring immediate action. If only he knew what he was really looking at. Sir, Elena said carefully, I noticed some irregularities in the document formatting, minor inconsistencies that might indicate transmission errors or unauthorized modifications. Thornton glanced up from the papers. What kind of irregularities? Elena had to be precise here. Too much detail would raise questions about how she had identified patterns that required specialized training to recognize. Too little might allow a catastrophic operation to proceed unchecked. Spacing anomalies and unusual word choices that don't match standard diplomatic protocol, she replied. It could be nothing, but in my experience, such inconsistencies sometimes indicate that documents have been altered or compromised during transmission. Colonel Morrison leaned forward. Are you suggesting these documents aren't authentic? I'm suggesting they may contain information beyond what's visible in standard translation, Elena said carefully. Without additional analysis, it's difficult to determine the significance. General Thornton considered this. What kind of additional analysis? This was the moment Elena had been dreading and hoping for simultaneously. Revealing her analytical capabilities would expose her true background, but allowing the operation hidden in these documents to proceed could cost thousands of lives. Cryptographic analysis, sir. Looking for embedded codes or hidden messages that might have been inserted into the diplomatic text. The room went quiet. Several officers exchanged glances that suggested Elena had just ventured far beyond her expected expertise. Doctor, Thornton said slowly, cryptographic analysis isn't typically within the purview of translation services. What makes you think you're qualified to conduct such analysis? Elena met his gaze directly, knowing that her next words would change everything. Because before I was Dr. Elena Vasquez, Pentagon Translator, I was Cipher, senior cryptanalyst with the CIA's Special Activities Division. The silence that followed was absolute. Colonel Morrison's pen stopped moving mid-sentence. Major William, who had been reviewing his own documents, looked up with an expression of complete shock. General Thornton set down the translations and studied Elena with new intensity. Cipher was reported killed in action 3 years ago during a mission in Eastern Europe. Reports of my death were necessary for operational security, Elena replied. My extraction from that mission required establishing a new identity and removing all traces of my previous existence from official records. That's impossible, Morrison said. We would have been briefed on any CIA asset operating under deep cover within Pentagon facilities. Not if the cover was approved at classification levels above your clearance, Elena countered. Some operations require compartmentalization information so complete that even allied agencies aren't informed. Thornton leaned back in his chair, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the quiet woman who had been translating his classified documents for 18 months. If what you're claiming is true, then you've been conducting unauthorized intelligence gathering within this facility. I've been conducting my assigned duties as a translator, Elena replied. Today is the first time I've encountered material that required my previous skill set. She gestured to the documents on the table. And what I've found suggests an imminent operation that will destabilize 3 continents and potentially trigger armed conflicts involving NATO allies. Major Williams spoke for the first time. What exactly did you find? Elena took a breath, knowing that fully revealing her analysis would confirm her claims about her background, while simultaneously exposing her to charges of operating beyond her authority. The 3 documents you asked me to translate contain embedded activation codes for sleeper cell networks across Europe, Central America, and Eastern Europe. The encoding is sophisticated, military-grade cryptography disguised as diplomatic formatting irregularities. She opened her laptop and connected it to the room's secure display system. If I may demonstrate, Thornton nodded, his expression grave. Elena pulled up the German document and began highlighting the hidden patterns she had identified. These seemingly random spacing irregularities actually create a matrix when mapped against standard diplomatic formatting protocols. The matrix contains coordinates, timing sequences, and activation codes. As she worked, the hidden message became visible on the screen, a detailed set of instructions for coordinated attacks on transportation infrastructure across Germany, France, and Poland. Morrison stared at the display. Jesus Christ, how did you see this? 8 years of training with the agency's best cryptanalysts, Elena replied, plus field experience in environments where missing hidden messages meant failing missions and losing assets. She brought up the Spanish document. This one contains similar encoding but focused on Central American operations, drug interdiction routes, government facilities, and communications infrastructure. The pattern repeated with the Austrian document, sophisticated encoding hiding detailed operational instructions within routine diplomatic correspondence. General Thornton was already reaching for his secure phone. I need to speak with CIA Director Harrison immediately. Sir, Elena said quickly, before you make that call, there's something else you need to know. Thornton paused. What? These documents didn't come from the agencies they claim to represent. The encryption methods are consistent with techniques used by a specific group I encountered during my final CIA mission, the same mission that required my apparent death and new identity. What group? Morrison demanded. Elena's expression hardened. A private military contractor called Meridian Solutions. They specialize in creating international incidents that benefit their clients' interests. Arms dealers, destabilized regions, and governments that profit from controlled chaos. You're talking about false flag operations, Williams said. I'm talking about engineered warfare, Elena corrected. Meridian doesn't just create incidents. They create the conditions for prolonged conflicts that generate maximum profit for their network of clients. Thornton completed his call to CIA headquarters and turned back to Elena. Director Harrison is sending a team to debrief you immediately. Until they arrive, this room is locked down, and no one discusses what we've learned here. Over the next 4 hours, Elena found herself in a secure conference room 3 levels below the Pentagon's main floor, facing a review panel that included CIA Director Sarah Harrison, NSA Deputy Director Michael Chen, and FBI Assistant Director Robert Torres. Director Harrison, a silver-haired woman whose calm demeanor masked decades of experience with the intelligence community's darkest secrets, studied Elena across the table. Agent Martinez, or should I say, Dr. Vasquez, your apparent resurrection has created considerable concern at the highest levels of government. I understand, ma'am, Elena replied, but the immediate threat posed by the Meridian operation outweighs concerns about my operational status. Deputy Director Chen leaned forward. Explain your connection to Meridian Solutions. Elena had prepared for this question during her 3 years of hiding. My final CIA mission involved investigating reports of a private contractor manipulating intelligence to justify military interventions in Eastern Europe. I discovered that Meridian had been creating false intelligence reports, staging attacks on civilian targets, and coordinating with corrupt officials in multiple governments. What happened to your team? Harrison asked quietly. Betrayed by someone with access to our operational details. 7 agents died in what appeared to be a terrorist attack on our safe house in Prague. I survived only because I was conducting external surveillance at the time of the strike. Elena's voice remained steady, but Director Harrison caught the slight tension in her posture that suggested the memories remained painful. You went underground instead of reporting to extraction protocols, Torres observed. arrived. I couldn't trust normal channels, Elena explained. Someone with high-level access had betrayed our mission. I needed to disappear completely while gathering evidence that could expose Meridian's operations. And did you gather that evidence? Chen asked. Elena nodded. 3 years' worth. Financial records, communication intercepts, and documented connections between Meridian and officials in 7 different countries, all secured in locations that only I can access. Harrison exchanged glances with her colleagues. Agent Martinez, the operation you've uncovered today, do you believe it's connected to your original mission? I'm certain it is. The encryption methods, the coordination between multiple regions, and the sophisticated embedding techniques all match Meridian's operational patterns. They're preparing something massive, and today's documents are just the activation phase. Director Harrison stood and walked to a secure terminal, entering a series of codes that Elena recognized as access protocols for the CIA's most classified databases. After several minutes of review, Harrison returned to the table with a grim expression. Agent Martinez, the intelligence you provided matches fragmentary reports we've been receiving from stations across Europe and Central America. Increased activity among known arms dealers, unusual movements of personnel with military backgrounds, and communications intercepts suggesting coordinated operations. How much time do we have? Elena asked. Harrison checked her watch. Based on the activation codes you decrypted, approximately 36 hours before the first phase begins. Then we need to move fast, Elena said. Meridian's operations are designed to create cascading effects. Once they begin, stopping them becomes exponentially more difficult. Deputy Director Chen accessed his own secure files. Agent Martinez, are you prepared to resume active operational status? What we're discussing would require you to abandon your current identity and return to intelligence work. Elena was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. For 3 years, she had been Dr. Elena Vasquez, quiet translator with a predictable routine and a carefully constructed normal life. Returning to operational status meant abandoning that safety and accepting the risks that had nearly killed her before. Yes, sir, she said finally. The mission comes first. Over the next 36 hours, Elena found herself at the center of a coordinated international operation involving intelligence agencies across 3 continents. Her linguistic skills and knowledge of Meridian's operational patterns made her invaluable for coordinating with European partners and decrypting additional communications as they were intercepted. The scale of Meridian's planned operation was staggering. Synchronized attacks on transportation hubs in 12 cities, assassination attempts on 6 government officials, and false flag operations designed to implicate 3 different terrorist organizations. The goal was to create enough chaos to justify massive military interventions that would generate billions in contracts for Meridian's client network. Elena worked with teams in London, Berlin, Madrid, and Mexico City, using her cryptanalysis expertise to unravel the complex communication networks Meridian had established. Each decoded message revealed new targets, new timeline, and new assets that needed to be identified and neutralized. The final phase of the operation took place in a nondescript office building in Arlington, Virginia, where Elena and a joint FBI-CIA task force traced Meridian's command structure to its ultimate source, a consortium of defense contractors, arms dealers, and corrupt officials who had been manipulating international conflicts for over a decade. As federal agents arrested Meridian's leadership and seized their operational files, Elena stood in the command center watching real-time reports of prevented attacks across multiple continents, transportation systems that remained operational, government officials who would live to see another day, terrorist organizations that wouldn't be falsely blamed for attacks they didn't commit. Director Harrison approached as the final arrests were confirmed. Agent Martinez, your analysis prevented what could have been the most destabilizing series of attacks in modern history. Elena nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. Ma'am, this was just one network. Meridian was sophisticated, but they weren't unique. There are others operating with similar goals and methods, which is why we need officers like you to identify and counter them, Harrison replied. The question is, what do you want to do next? Elena looked around the command center, watching intelligence professionals from multiple agencies working together to ensure the safety of civilians they would never meet. After 3 years of hiding, of translating routine documents, and pretending to be someone she wasn't, she had remembered why she had joined the agency in the first place. I want to continue the mission, she said, but not as Dr. Elena Vasquez, translator, as Agent Martinez, doing the work that only a few people can do. Director Harrison smiled. Welcome back, Agent Martinez. 6 months later, in a secure conference conference room that looked remarkably similar to the Pentagon briefing room where her latest mission had begun. Elena reviewed intelligence reports from 17 different countries. Her official title was Senior Analyst for Counterterrorism Operations, but her actual role was more specialized. She hunted the people who created the chaos that others spent their lives trying to prevent. The work was dangerous, often invisible, and occasionally thankless. But as she analyzed the latest intercepts from a network attempting to manipulate tensions between India and Pakistan, Elena understood that some missions were too important to leave to others. Her secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message, new documents requiring immediate analysis, possible connections to known threat networks, priority classification above normal channels. Elena smiled as she prepared her analytical tools. Some people served their country in uniform, standing in formation and saluting flags. Others served in anonymous offices, finding patterns in chaos and preventing disasters that would never make headlines. Both kinds of service mattered, but for Elena Martinez, there was only one kind she was meant to do. The quiet translator in the corner had been a useful disguise, but the cryptanalyst who could read the secrets hidden in plain sight, that was who she really was, and who she would always be, no matter what name appeared on her identification badge.